Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the abducens nerve. The abducens nerve. Among the 12 cranial nerves seen, the abducens nerve is the sixth cranial nerve. The abducens nerve supplies the lateral rectus muscle and it abducts the eye. Hence, it is also known as the abducens nerve. So, this is the view of the human brain from the inferior surface or from below. Here the 12 cranial nerves are seen and this is the abducens nerve. The abducens nerve has a long intracranial course, that is a long course within the cranial cavity, and it also has the longest subarachnoid course of all the cranial nerves. The abducens nerve also has two functional components, namely the general somatic efferent fibers and the general somatic afferent fibers. So let us see about them in detail. First, let us talk about the general somatic efferent fibers. The general somatic efferent fibers arise from the general somatic efferent nuclei present in the brainstem, and they supply motor fibers to skeletal muscles of somatic origin. So, the various general somatic efferent nuclei present in the brainstem are the oculomotor nucleus, the trochlear nucleus, the abducens nucleus and the hypoglossal nucleus. Here, the abducens nerve arises from the abducens nucleus and it supplies motor component to the ipsilateral lateral rectus muscle, which means the lateral rectus muscle of the same side. Moving on to the second component of the sixth cranial nerve. The second component of the sixth cranial nerve are the general somatic afferent fibers. The general somatic afferent fibers are associated with the general somatic afferent nuclei of the brainstem, and these nuclei are primarily that of the fifth cranial nerve. So, the general somatic afferent nuclei seen in the brainstem are the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, the pontine or the chief sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and the spinal trigeminal nucleus. So, these three nuclei are associated with that of the trigeminal nerve. The other general somatic afferent nucleus seen in the brainstem is that of the vestibular or the cochlear nucleus. So, the general somatic afferent fibers of the abducens nerve arise from the lateral rectus muscle and it is carried to the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So, next let us move on to the abducens nucleus. Okay, so abducens nucleus. As we have already seen, the abducens nucleus is a general somatic efferent nucleus, which means it supplies the skeletal muscle of somatic origin. The abducens nucleus is located in the lower pontine region beneath the floor of the fourth ventricle at the level of the facial colliculus. So let us see about this. So let us see this picture. Here we can see the sixth cranial nerve nucleus. So this is the floor of the fourth ventricle, and we can see that the sixth cranial nerve nucleus is located in the lower pontine region beneath the floor of the fourth ventricle, and it is at the level of the facial colliculus. The abducens nucleus is ventromedially related to the medial longitudinal bundle. So let us see about the medial longitudinal bundle and the facial colliculus in detail now. Okay, so in this picture, the fibers we can see this is the sixth cranial nerve nucleus, and the fibers emerging from the sixth cranial nerve nucleus make the abducens nerve. So, this is the seventh cranial nerve nucleus or the facial nucleus. The fibers from the facial nucleus as they emerge from the seventh cranial nerve nucleus. So, fibers from the facial nerve as they emerge from the seventh cranial nerve nucleus, it moves behind the sixth cranial nerve nucleus and and it comes out laterally when compared to the abducens nerve. So when the fibers of the facial nerve moves behind the sixth cranial nerve nucleus, they produce an elevation which is known as the facial colliculus. So this is known as the facial colliculus, an elevation seen here. This is the facial colliculus. So ventromedially to the abducens nerve, we can see the medial longitudinal bundle. So what is meant by the medial longitudinal bundle? The medial longitudinal bundle connects the third, fourth, sixth, eighth and the 11th cranial nerves. So this is where the abducens nerve originates, that is the abducens nucleus. So in this image, as we all can see, this is the abducens nerve, and this is the abducens nerve emerging from the abducens nucleus or the sixth cranial nerve nucleus, and this green colored nucleus is that of the facial nerve, or that is the facial nucleus. The fibers from the facial nucleus, that is the facial nerve, as they emerge, they move behind the abducens nucleus and form an elevation here which is known as the facial colliculus, and they emerge laterally when compared to that of the abducens nerve. Next, let us see about the course of the nerve. The nerve fibers from the nucleus run downwards and forwards. As they move downwards and forwards, they move through the trapezial body, the medial lemniscus, and reach the basilar part of the pons. So let us see more about the trapezoid body, medial lemniscus. So in this picture, we can see the trapezoid body located here. So trapezoid body is seen dorsally to the pontine nuclei and ventral to the medial lemniscus. It is an important part of the auditory pathway. The medial lemniscus consists of tracts of fasciculus cuneatus and fasciculus gracilis. So medial lemniscus consists of the tracts of fasciculus gracilis and the fasciculus cuneatus, and it forms an important part of the touch, vibrations, vibratory sensations and proprioception pathways. Okay. So in this picture, we can also observe that the abducens nerve emerges here out of the pontomedullary junction, and it is seen medially to the facial and the glossopharyngeal nerve, that is the 7th and the 8th cranial nerves. The abducens nerve emerges out of the pontomedullary junction, and it is seen in medial relation to the 7th and the 8th cranial nerves. Once the nerve passes or emerges out of the pontomedullary junction, it passes through the cisterna pontis. So here the cisterna pontis can be seen, which is nothing but a subarachnoid space filled with CSF. Then the nerve is seen in relation to the anteroinferior cerebellar artery. The anteroinferior cerebellar artery is a branch of the basilar artery. So let us see more about this in detail now. So vertebral arteries, the two vertebral arteries, that is the right and the left side, they merge to form the basilar artery. So here the vertebral artery can be seen, and the other vertebral artery is on the other side. So the two vertebral arteries merge to form the basilar artery. There is a branch of the basilar artery which is known as the anteroinferior cerebellar artery, and this anteroinferior cerebellar artery is seen in relation to the 6th cranial nerve. So since the basilar artery gives a branch, this is the anteroinferior cerebellar artery. So it is seen in relation to the 6th cranial nerve. The basilar artery is also seen in between the two abducens nerves. So one abducens nerve is seen here, the other abducens nerve can be seen on the other side, and the basilar artery is seen in between them. So this point is already been told. The nerve moves outwards at the pontomedullary junction medial to the 7th and the 8th cranial nerves. Now let us see more about the course of the abducens nerve. Now the nerve, after it emerges out of the pontomedullary junction, it passes through the posterior cranial fossa and it climbs up the clivus over the petrous part of the temporal bone. So in this picture, we can see in both of these pictures, the nerve emerges out of the pontomedullary junction. The nerve emerges here out of the pontomedullary junction. It moves through the posterior cranial fossa and climbs up the clivus. It climbs up the clivus over to the petrous part of the temporal bone. Over to the petrous part of the temporal bone. An important point to remember is that at the petrous part of the temporal bone, the nerve takes a sharp bend, and this is very important in false localizing signs, which we will see later. We will see about the false localizing sign at the end of the class. Once at the petrous part of the temporal bone, it moves forward to the right sharply and forms an angle under the petrosphenoidal or the Gruber's ligament. Then the nerve pierces the meningeal layer of the dura mater to enter the Doral's canal. Once again in this picture we can observe everything. So as the nerve emerges from the pontomedullary junction, it moves to the posterior cranial fossa and then it climbs up the clivus, pierces the meningeal layer of the dura mater, and now it is a content of the Doral's canal along with the inferior petrosal sinus. Then it moves into the cavernous sinus and it is a content of the cavernous sinus along with the internal carotid artery. So it then moves into the cavernous sinus and is a content of the cavernous sinus along with the internal carotid artery. So this is again a picture showing that the abducens nerve is a content of the cavernous sinus along with the internal carotid artery. So after exiting the cavernous sinus, it moves into the superior orbital fissure within the annulus of Zinn and then into the orbital cavity, and then it ends by supplying the lateral rectus muscle. So when it causes the lateral rectus muscle to abduct or laterally rotate. So once again we can see this. After it exits the cavernous sinus, it moves through the superior orbital fissure and then into the orbital cavity and ends by supplying the lateral rectus muscle. The only muscle which is supplied by the abducens nerve is the lateral rectus muscle, and it causes the lateral rectus to abduct or laterally rotate. So this is a picture of the superior orbital fissure and the annular ring of Zinn. So moving to the embryology part, the human abducens nerve, it is derived from the basal plate of the embryonic pons. So the basal plate is the region of the neural tube which is ventral to the sulcus limitans, and sulcus limitans is a groove which separates the basal and the alar plates of the neural tube. So this is the basal plate and this is separated from the alar plate by the sulcus limitans. So testing of the abducens nerve. The abducens nerve is tested by testing the eye movements or the movements of the eye. So a patient is asked to follow a point. It may also be a tip of the pen without moving their head. And then the doctor asks the patient if there is any blurring of vision or diplopia. If there is any blurring of vision or diplopia seen, then there might be a damage to the abducens nerve. Clinical importance. So abducens nerve palsy may be due to the following reasons. There might be a tumor compressing the sixth nerve nucleus or the abducens nucleus, or there may also be an aneurysm of the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, or trauma. Due to trauma, there may also be a fracture to the bones of the orbit. Hence, the abducens nerve palsy are caused due to the following reasons. So now let us move and study about the false localizing sign. False localizing sign. So when there is increased intracranial pressure, the brain stem is herniated out of the foramen magnum and the abducens nerve is now compressed against the bony part of the temporal bone. We have already seen that the abducens nerve takes a sharp bend along the bony part of the temporal bone. So when it is compressed against the bony part of the temporal bone, the nerve damage occurs and it is mistaken for a lesion in the abducens nucleus. Hence, it is known as the false localizing sign, as it is mistaken for a lesion in the abducens nucleus. So this is a picture showing the abducens nerve palsy. Signs seen in abducens palsy: diplopia or double vision due to lateral rectus paralysis. Squint, generally medial squint is seen, and this is because as the lateral rectus is paralyzed, so no lateral rotation or abduction is possible, so the eyeball moves medially or it moves inwards. Esotropia or convergent squint. It is a squint in which one or both eyes are turned inwards, that is, it results in cross-eyed appearance. So other syndromes: Mobius syndrome. Other syndromes which occur due to the damage of abducens nerve. The first one is Mobius syndrome. It is a rare congenital disorder in which both abducens and the facial nerves are affected. Duane syndrome. It is a condition in which abduction and adduction are affected because there is a partial innervation of the lateral rectus muscle by the oculomotor nerve. So other syndromes: Millard-Gubler syndrome. So the Millard-Gubler syndrome is also known as the ventral pontine syndrome. So it occurs due to a lesion in the pons. So when there is a lesion in the pons, it results in damage of the 6th and the 7th cranial nerves and also to the fibers of the corticospinal or the pyramidal tract. So the corticospinal or the pyramidal tract helps in the motor movements of our body. So when the corticospinal tract is damaged, it results in hemiplegia, generally contralateral hemiplegia, as the pyramidal tract undergoes a decussation. The 6th cranial nerve, when it is paralyzed, diplopia and strabismus is seen, and when the 7th cranial nerve or the facial nerve is paralyzed, it also results in paralysis of the muscles of facial expression. The next syndrome is Raymond-Seston syndrome. The Raymond-Seston syndrome is due to the blockage of the long circumferential branches of the basilar artery. So the two vertebral arteries unite to form the basilar artery, and basilar artery gives many branches, out of which the long circumferential branches seen here will supply the pons. So it is also known as the upper dorsal pontine syndrome. So when there is a blockage to the long circumferential branches of the basilar artery, the abducens nerve and the corticospinal tract are damaged. Hence, lateral rectus paralysis and hemiplegia occurs. The next syndrome is the Foville syndrome. The Fowell syndrome is caused by the blockage of the perforating branches of the basilar artery. So these are the perforating branches of the basilar artery, and when these perforating branches are blocked, the Fowell syndrome is caused. Gradenigo syndrome, it is a clinical triad of otitis media, inflammation of the medial cavity, facial pain, and abducens palsy, because there is an infection in the petrous part of the temporal bone. Elevated intracranial pressure syndrome. We have already seen about the elevated intracranial pressure syndrome. So when there is increased intracranial pressure causes the downward displacement of the brainstem, and hence the sixth cranial nerve is stretched against the bony part of the temporal bone, and hence the sixth cranial nerve is damaged. It is an example of false localizing sign. Cavernous sinus syndromes. This occurs when the sixth cranial nerve is damaged inside the cavernous sinus. It may be due to the intracavernous internal carotid artery aneurysm, or carotid cavernous fistula, or Tolosa-Hunt syndrome, where there is an inflammation of the anterior portion of the cavernous sinus. Conditions which mimic the sixth nerve palsy are thyroid eye diseases, myasthenia gravis, and fracture of the orbit. I hope you all understood the lecture, and thank you.